Welcome to the Desert Sanctuary with Carl and Laura Forehand.
Often when we have doubts about religion or simply want to ask questions, it can feel like we are wandering out into the desert.
We would like to invite you to join our sanctuary, the Desert Sanctuary.
We've tried to pick guests that would resonate with and challenge us and our fellow seekers here in the desert.
We believe that a key to the journey is to keep asking good questions, and we believe that all stories are sacred.
Our hope is that you will find life and healing for your body and mind, and that you will be able to be where you are and be who you are.
And now, here is our show. Hi, welcome to the Desert Sanctuary podcast. I'm Laura Forehand. I am here with Carl Forehand, and we have a special guest tonight that we're going to be interviewing, Melissa Spiers. She has a new book, and we're going to be talking about that. Is there anything that you wanted to share before we jump in?
No, I'm just glad to be here today. I'm not feeling great today.
The flu is going around.
All goes well. Laura will ask most of the questions and it'll be great, and we'll do it.
Yeah,
we're happy to have you here, Melissa. We think stories are sacred. We think that people's stories mean a lot. So we want to hear your story first, then we'll talk about the book and have a grand old time, and we'll realize it's an hour pretty soon, and we'll say, "Oh, where'd the time go?" But so if you want, just in whatever length and whatever depth you want to do that, just let us know where you come from, what happened. Are you in a deconstruction now, I assume, and then we'll talk about the book here in a minute. So
okay, all right. Well, thank you for having me, and I'm so sorry you have the flu. It has really been going around. Everybody I know has had it except for me, so knock on wood. But it's not been a good one. My name is Melissa Duge Spiers, and I was a fourth generation on both sides of my family, Seventh-day Adventist. And a lot of people, it's an enormous Christian fundamentalist organization. A lot of people have never heard about it, even though they are technically larger than the Mormons, larger than the SBC. They have about 25 million members worldwide. They came out of the same Millerite movement in Victorian America, where the Mormons and the JWs did.
Mm-hmm.
They had a prophet named Ellen White. Oddly, their prophet was female, but they won't ordain women.
Mm-hmm.
Go figure. So that was part of the whole Great Disappointment thing that spawned a bunch of cults, and Adventism just kind of legitimized themselves a little bit past a cult. I would argue they still are a cult. But they believe every word of the Bible is true. They honor the biblical rules of sundown Friday to sundown Saturday. They honor the Sabbath as their day of worship. They're vegetarian. They don't believe in being in the world at all, of the world. So we grew up, had no, the prophet forbade any music with a rock beat. We couldn't go to movies. We couldn't have a television. We couldn't listen to popular music. We couldn't dance. So a very as cult-like of an existence as you can be without actually growing up in a compound. And they have an enormous education. I think they're the second largest or third largest education system in the world, right behind the Catholics, obviously. And the fourth or fifth largest healthcare system in the world. They run Advent Health and the Blue Zones, if anyone knows about those.
Yeah.
But all of that to say, on my book, my tagline is that it's a story of sex, sin, and secrets in the biggest church no one knows. Like people just don't. They exist completely under the radar. And so I grew up third, fourth, fifth generation, whatever it is on each side of my family. And I left the church at 18, but I didn't start deconstructing until about 10 years ago. I really thought that leaving equaled healing. And, I was
Mm.
gone, I was done, la la la, watch me live this big, fabulous life out in the world. I'm so healed,
Mm.
and of course, no, I wasn't. And I was just dragging my religious trauma like a millstone
Mhm.
through several decades of attempting to be normal. And it all came kind of crashing down in my late 30s, early 40s, when I found out that my father, who had been not only a Seventh-day Adventist doctor, but he'd been a Seventh-day Adventist preacher, pastor. He'd gone to the seminary. He had been a youth pastor. Um, when I was a tiny, tiny baby, he had been a serial child predator as a youth pastor for the
Mhm.
church. And that just rocked my world. I was living my best life out in the real world
Mhm.
and had never dealt. I mean, as soon as I left the church at 18, I wouldn't talk about being religious. I wouldn't hear about it. It was like that was back there and it was gone.
Mm.
And then when I found this out about my dad, it kind of like, hit me in the back of the head. And I tracked down and befriended one of his victims, and she became a very good friend. And she really gently nudged me because I contacted her thinking, I really need to know this story. Like, I adored my father. Everybody adored my father.
Mhm.
How could this be? What does it mean? And I just needed answers from her. And she was like, I'll give you all the answers you want, but you don't want this specific story. You need to look at the big picture. And let me tell you how big and evil that church is and how they do this systemically. They cover it up. They move the perpetrator. They do this and that. And of course, the last thing I wanted to do was look at the church at all. Didn't want to think about it. But I did. And so since then, for the past 15 or more years, I have been deconstructing personally, but also learning about the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And I've become an advocate for victims because their child sex abuse problems are equal to the Catholics. I mean, it is everywhere. I hear from people every day who have been abused by Adventist teachers, Adventist pastors, etc. And it seems like all churches deal with it the same way. They blame the victim, they ignore it, they try to hush it up until somebody twists their arm badly enough that then they have to deal with it.
Mm.
They don't take it to the authorities. No, 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 let us deal with it internally. And
Mhm.
they move the perpetrators again and again and again. And so it's now become kind of my mission. It's my work in life is to try to give a voice to this, um, and to try to drag the church out into the light,
Hmm.
really just shine a light and say, you can't be shoving yourself and everything else under the carpet anymore. You're just,
Hmm.
Are you finding some other people out here? We call it the wilderness or the desert. Or are you finding some other people that want to help you? Or those people
yes.
coming out also? Good.
Yes. It's very difficult there aren't too many loud and out ex-Adventists like I am yet. It's a pretty scary thing. They're a very litigious, they have a whole legal arm that, forces people to sign NDAs and is,
Mm.
uh, uh,
Right.
um, and I think a lot of people who leave are like I was, where they just don't want to think about it again. They don't want to talk about it. So they don't even think to do like I'm doing and build a social media presence of like, hello, look at this church.
Mhm.
Um, so I am one of the few, but I'm really hoping with my book that will change. I always tell people my biggest hope with my book and with my social media is to become forgotten. Like, I literally hope I can inspire just piles of younger people, other people from all walks to start speaking out. And pretty soon I'm like that old lady who, oh yeah, she, way far ago. Because there are so many stories to be told. And I think this is just the beginning.
Mm.
We just got a gigantic mass tort lawsuit started just in the past few weeks. A personal injury law firm called Pintus and Mullins is just opened it up to anybody who had been abused within the Adventist system. They've also done a lot of work against the Catholic Church, so they have a lot of experience with this. And they are expecting this to be of equal volume, equal expansion. I don't know. So there is a girl. She was not raised Adventist, but I went to school with her parents, and she is in that law firm. So that's been fun to see how connected. I mean, you find ex-Adventists everywhere if they're willing to talk.
Yeah. Yeah. Something that you said that, and we've seen this in the Catholic Church, and we've heard stories of even the Baptist Church where they just move people around, the
Yes.
abusers around. And so I'm just curious, with your father being a perpetrator, did that happen to your family as you were growing up?
No, and people, that's always the biggest question people ask
Mm.
is like, no, we thought he was magic. He was like
Mhm.
the most wonderful, fun, studious. He was just grand in our estimation, and we didn't have any. The only way that now in hindsight, I see that his behavior directly affected us as children was that it made my poor mother so she was the classic sheltered 50s religious obedient. I mean, she had done everything right and by the book, and she's married to this guy who all of a sudden is a predator. um
Mhm.
I don't think she ever recovered from that. And so the way she raised us was just claustrophobic. We were never out of her sight. We were never allowed to spend the night at anyone's house. We were never allowed to go to camps or anything, because obviously, if this man that she was in love with could be a predator, everyone's a predator potentially. And so it was very difficult growing up with my mother, and I was the strong-willed child. I was the one who really fought it with her. And now, of course, in hindsight, I have so much grace and empathy for her, because now I see she was just trying to protect us, and she did.
Right.
It didn't happen to us
Mhm.
in the family or outside. And so she achieved her main objective. We suffered under the iron control of it quite a bit.
I think it's hard to see that when you're a child, right?
Yeah,
And then
right.
when you are old enough or have your own family or whatever life experiences, I think you realize just how much your parents tried to, protect you from the
Yes.
things that were perhaps traumatizing for them. And I thought it
Right.
was really interesting what you said, about leaving the church and thinking it was all behind me. Because I mean, I can relate to that. I think there's a lot of our listeners who can relate to that.
Yeah.
But the thing that we have learned, and I'm sure you have learned too, is just that undealt with trauma, it never goes away, right? I
Never.
mean,
Never.
until you deal with it,
Yep.
it's always going to be lurking. Um, just something doesn't sit right with you until you realize, okay, I've got some trauma that I've just been continuing. What do you call it, Carl? Like a beach ball that you're just trying to push down,
Stuff
and
down.
Under the
eventually
water.
it won't stay down
Yeah.
anymore, right? So,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's really, really true. And I did think that I was just sailing onward, but two failed marriages and another really awful, scary relationship later, I realized that I had been perpetuating this horrible, not only the patriarchal men were way above women a thing, but if I could find a boot to put on my neck that was male, I would do it. And I ended up in incredibly abusive relationships, or even with people who weren't abusive, but I didn't know how to speak up for my own needs because we were always told we weren't allowed. Your needs were selfish. They were sinful. They were, we didn't have boundaries. Good grief. We weren't allowed to have boundaries. So I didn't know how to function in the world. And it all traces back to that, to the religious upbringing. But I didn't know that, I mean,
Right.
obviously when I left at 18, there was no concept of deconstruction.
Mhm.
You just kind of muddled on through life. And obviously there wasn't even any social media, so you never connected with anyone else who might be going through the same thing, to even just talk about it. And so we all thought we were alone, I think. And so you just squash it down. Okay, well, whatever, we're just going on. And yeah, it just hangs there until you deal with it.
Right. Until something triggers it and you're kind of forced to,
Yeah. Yeah.
So can I ask, like, what prompted you to leave the church at 18? Was it just kind of like, boom, I'm 18, I'm an adult, I'm just gonna,
Yeah.
or was
Yeah.
it something else?
My sister and I have an older sister who is also not in the church anymore. And we talk all the time about, like, did we ever actually believe
Mm.
any of it? Or were we just such good girls and so programmed that we just went along with
The
it?
survival technique.
Yeah, survival.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
Hmm.
I think that was more than anything my approach, like just survive and get through it. And I didn't believe it, but I didn't know what the other options were.
Hmm.
And then in high school, I had because the Adventist Church is extraordinarily obsessed with sex, and that's not unusual for, you know, fundamentalist culty
Yeah.
religions, but
Yeah.
they are extremely anti-LGBTQ. They were one of their pastors began conversion therapy. Their prophet and John Harvey Kellogg, I don't know if you know any of his history, but he was one of the founders of the Adventist Church. He invented cornflakes to
Yeah.
get rid of lust,
Right.
and he was giving people yogurt enemas to, like, not masturbate. And I mean, just
Yeah. I've seen that guy.
weird and obsessed. And their prophet, Ellen White, had the same obsessions. She wrote books about it, to advice to mothers about preventing your children from masturbating. And I promise I do have a point with this. I will
You're
get to
fine.
about why I left the church.
Yeah.
But it just goes on and on. They actually their world famous medical school, the guy who managed it for 3 decades, wrote a book, a purity manual that I had to use in high school, in which he recommended female genital mutilation to stop masturbation. I mean, they're
Oh, wow.
obsessed with everything, controlling everything about sex, except for punishing pastors who molest children. I don't know.
Mhm.
Somehow they missed that control.
Hmm.
But so as a high school student, of course, the purity culture pressure, which is particularly bad for the girls, was
Mhm.
just unrelenting. And we would have whole weeks of prayer where we were subjected to these long things about purity culture. And it literally hit me kind of like a light bulb when I was about a junior, I guess. I was like, all the adults around us are scared. They're so scared of
Mhm.
something.
Yeah.
Hmm.
They're Why are they so afraid, particularly when they talk about sex? They just don't want us to find out. And why is that?
Hmm.
And so, I'm a fairly like aggressive personality. And so I was just like, well, I guess then I need to find out what this is all about. So I literally I had no experience, no boyfriends, anything before this, really. And I went down. I knew I couldn't start experimenting in the Adventist system because that would be gossip and shaming and horrible. And oh, my parents would find out, and God knows what would happen to me. And so I literally just went down to the local public school and, like, watched basketball games and was like, that guy's really cute. I'm going to sleep with him. And so I did. And after that, just kind of the whole house of cards fell apart,
Hmm.
because what they told us about, like, your soul will be ripped apart and you're going to
Mhm.
imprint on him and you're going to be the chewed gum and the
Yeah.
licked
Yeah.
cupcake
Yeah.
and the
That
crumpled
stuff's
shirt,
terrible. Yeah.
all that crap just didn't happen. And I was like,
Mhm.
okay, so none
Mhm.
of the shit that you guys are pushing on us. You're just scared you're gonna lose control of us. And so watch me walk out the door.
Right,
Mhm.
right.
You know what I think is so interesting with all the like, not only have we heard stories of, other people in high control religions or cults, but I also like to listen to a lot of cult podcasts and things like
Mhm.
that. But what's interesting, and I like to watch documentaries too, but the thing that's interesting to me is that religions or cults that are hyper fixated on sex either absolutely cannot have sex, nothing, like don't even look at another person.
Right.
And the
Yeah.
flip side of that is like I think it's the children of God who like they were having sex with
Whoa.
children, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
either part of that spectrum where they're hyper fixated on sex, I feel like there's something they're trying to hide. Now, the ones that
Right.
are like maybe more like the children of God are not trying to hide so much, but they're trying to normalize,
Right. Normalize. Yeah.
pedophilia.
Hmm.
But religions like, the Catholics, we were part of the Southern Baptist denomination, the Adventists, like you're talking about, when they're so hyper fixated on sex is evil and horrible until you get
Yeah.
married, of course,
Right.
and then, I feel like they're that's usually where you find this abuse that you're talking about,
Yep.
because there's
Yep.
such a like that over
Repression of that.
yes,
Yeah.
and trying
Mhm.
to control that
Yep.
so desperately that
Yep.
I think
That
you
it comes
see
out in bad ways. I
really
mean,
bad
just
ways. Yeah.
let people have normal sexuality, and this probably wouldn't be such an issue,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems pretty obvious, but hey,
Hmm.
mm,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
just
It seems like when you mentioned the patriarchy several times, it seems like when you give men that much power, that much control, and then you say, well, they're always right,
right.
they're bishops or they're, whatever label you have on them where you're at,
Yeah.
um, they're in control. It's ultimately going to come down to them. They'll protect each other.
Right.
And what I say
Hmm.
sometimes is it's like we get stuck with toddlers in charge of everything, and it's really probably more like junior high boys.
Hmm. That's a good,
And you
yeah.
see that in politics sometimes now where
Yes.
people have power and it's all about the power. And so then they act like, well, we have the Epstein, you know,
Hmm.
Yep.
yeah. And
Yep.
when Epstein happened, it happened, there are leaders from all over the place, all over the world that came
Yeah.
into that. So it's men acting like toddlers. And is that where you put the blame? Is it primarily the patriarchy, or are you still a Christian of some kind, or uh,
I am not. I went all the way to atheist and I never found anything to convince me to come back. But I do blame obviously the patriarchy for a majority of it. Uh yeah, I mean I don't the prophet uh, the whole religion is just so absurd to me that I just blame everything.
uh-huh.
I mean, the prophet Ellen White, she got hit in the head with a rock when she was 9, and it caused her she had a TBI. She had a traumatic brain injury. She
Mhm.
was in coma and she had lifelong seizures and hallucinations. And to say that she was inspired by God is just nonsensical. But yet here we are,
Hmm.
150 years later or whatever, and they
Mhm.
still believe every word she said was just divinely inspired. And so there's a lot of blame to go around, but the
Mhm.
patriarchy bears most of it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. What do you hope, like, what is your hope from the work that you do?
Um, you know, I think I just have really concrete kind of, I mean, of course, I hope that all the victims get justice. And I hope that we really drag the Adventist Church out into the spotlight and shine lights into all of its dark crevices. Um, But do I think that I personally can make that happen in my lifetime? I don't think so. So, um, my just little concrete step-by-step goals is I've been trying to, I hate the term hold space. It's so overused, but I really have been trying to just hold space for the victims who want to tell me their
Mhm.
stories. I've assembled documents of all of their stories, which came in really handy when that lawsuit started up, because then I could inform them of this whole pattern. And so I'm hoping to get the ball rolling
Mhm.
in terms of exposure of the church and respect and honor for the victims. And if all I can do is kind of kick it 3 notches down,
Mhm.
I'll really be thrilled that
Mhm.
that's what I could accomplish in life.
Yeah.
Why do you think people are so, like so skeptical to believe these stories? You know, I feel like what you were saying earlier, we just so often give a pass. And is that because there's a deity, a God involved, or
The F word.
yeah, the
Yeah,
F word, which is like forgiveness, like
right,
we've
right,
got to forgive,
right.
that whole just such a gross dynamic, really. But I'm just curious what your perspective is on that.
Yeah, it
Because I
is.
feel like even in our world today, we have a lot of victims that are very, very credible. Like if we
Yeah.
are just talking about the Epstein files, if we're not even talking about religious abuse,
Yeah.
sexual abuse, and these women, their story, I mean, well, I don't know if I really
You don't
believe
want
that. It's
reputation.
just like, what are we doing? What are we doing?
I know. I know. I think it's partly, especially when it involves children,
Yeah.
people don't like to face the uncomfortable truth of it.
Mhm.
And so it's much easier to say, well, they were a child. They might not remember it correctly. There's a lot of that bullshit.
Mhm.
But particularly in the religious setting, it is the big forgiveness thing. And I know in the Adventist church, that's huge. And there's even, so the legal arm of the Adventist church is called Adventist Risk Management. And they had, at least until recently, I haven't looked, I think I and a couple of creators have talked about it enough that they may have taken it down now, but they used to have a manual online for churches who were considering letting a predator be in their congregation.
Mhm.
And it was basically just, well, you'll have to consider basically, if you can save their soul, and I'm paraphrasing hugely, but
Mhm.
Yeah.
the risks basically, like not whether you just believe the child and get rid of the jerk,
Yeah.
but consider the risks of keeping them and where you might put them and how you might manage it. And they even had this little cartoon that was like a list of rules that you'll give to the predator. Ha ha ha, oh, how funny that is.
Mm.
About how they can. And I've heard from other people that in a couple of different conferences, the prison outreach system is really, really huge. And the Adventist churches really work on converting prisoners. And then when they're released, that's part of their thing, is they want them to be just welcomed into the congregation. And a lot of them are child predators. And I've heard from people that say, they know these people are predators and they're just like, well, we're just going to throw them into the congregation anyway and hope for the best type of thing.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of it is just grow those membership numbers at
Yeah.
whatever the cost.
And so
Uh,
a little bit you can understand that sentiment, right? Love everybody, accept everybody.
right.
But there's a big but after that,
Mhm.
right?
Exactly.
And it's, first of all, we don't need to meet in a building, and Jesus might have said we didn't need to meet in a building,
Right.
and we don't have to put them together. They can
Yeah,
listen to the sermons at home or whatever. But
Mhm.
um,
exactly.
yeah, so it's we want, of course, and every church. thinks that, right? We want to be
Right.
accepting, we want to be grace filled and all those things. But then, I mean, if it's the pastor doing it, then
Right,
yeah,
right. Then we've got a whole other issue.
yeah. And
Right.
so, we say, um, what you hear a lot of times is, well, we don't want to ruin somebody's reputation. Well,
Right.
you've ruined somebody's life
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
already.
we've got victims out there who, yeah, their lives have been ruined.
Yep.
I don't understand why that's okay, but
Yep.
supposedly this man of God,
Yeah.
we
Well, and I
can't.
just don't understand. I mean, Adventists have always been very, and I think it's gotten better, but at least certainly when I was still in the system, they were very anti-psychology. Like,
Mhm,
don't believe all
mhm.
this study of the brain, just pray harder, basically,
Yeah,
type of
yeah.
thing. And so, but now, I mean, with decades and decades of research
Mhm,
showing that
mhm.
child predators are rarely rehabilitated.
Yep,
They
yep.
are such recidivist, like repeat offenders.
Mhm,
Why don't they take that more seriously?
mhm.
Like,
Right.
just where
Plus, if
there's
they're
one victim, there's going to be 10, and
Right.
they just,
narcissists, they're in the same boat. They're not. MPD can't be. It's just almost impossible to treat.
right,
What you need to do is take them off the stage and get them out of the spotlight,
Mhm,
right?
right, right.
But we're not willing to do that. We're not willing to do the hard stuff,
mhm.
Yeah.
and solving those kind of problems is hard.
And a lot of
Yeah.
times we say, it's all about keeping, and I love how you referred to the Adventist Church as an organization at the beginning of our conversation, because that's what we say all the time. It's like, you got to keep the organization comes first, and you got to keep the train
Yes.
running
Yep. Yep.
at the expense of
Yep.
people
People.
And
and
the
their mental health.
reputation.
And yes.
Yeah,
Hmm.
got to keep the name clean.
Hmm.
That's the whole reason of oh, don't go to the authorities. Let us handle it inside.
But they
They
don't.
do not want it to hit the news ever in any way, shape, or form, and they'll do
Hmm.
anything.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's it's so, yeah, organization above all.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
So the book is called Holy Obedience.
Holy
Disobedience.
Yeah.
disobedience.
Ooh, I
Yeah.
messed up. I just looked at it too.
I wrote it down.
Holy Disobedience is with Leg Drive Books. Um,
Mhm.
how'd this come about? How'd you decide to write that? You told your story, of course, and that's what motivated. But
Yeah.
talk about how it came about.
So I have always been a writer. I'm a screenwriter. I write articles for magazines and things like that. And I never thought that I personally had a story to tell. I thought, oh, okay, I'll write other people's stories, or and then when I found out about my father, I had just had my first child and I was pregnant with my second, and it was a girl. And I couldn't imagine raising a daughter in the world. And of course, it made me think of my mother and how horrified, because I was born right around the time that this had started happening with my father. And so it was just this big full circle moment.
Hmm.
And I thought, okay, I'm going to sign up for a memoir writing class, and I'm just going to start doing this for just my own processing.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then I literally stumbled across in an article the woman that I befriended, and she was talking about Adventist church abuse cases. And I was like, oh my God, she's talking about my father.
Mm.
And so I reached out to her, I wrote her a letter, and I was just like, you may not want to hear from me, but I need to hear from you.
Mm.
And she was fantastic, and she wrote right back. And so then, and she um helped me write the book, helped me feel okay about writing the book. And so then it was my way of deconstructing for literally the past 15 years. I worked on it off and on, and I thought I wanted to publish it about 10 years ago. And I got this great agent, and he pitched it around, and everybody wrote back. All the editors said pretty much the same thing. They said, gorgeous writing, love the writing, but we're not doing misery memoirs right now. And I was so insulted, because
Mm.
to me, it's a Black comedy. I don't think of it as misery at all. And but I'm really glad it didn't publish then, because I was still deconstructing and I still had a hell of an arc to go through before. And so um that was the impetus for writing the book. And then what kicked me into actually getting into the publishing pipeline with it finally was about 4 years ago. I just came across a contest called Book Pipeline for unpublished manuscripts. And it was like, enter your manuscript and win, a little trophy and some money. And I was like, oh, I have that manuscript sitting in my drawer. Let me just send it in. And I won. And so then I was like, oh, okay. And they were like, well, we're going to hook you up with an agent, and and they were so great. They're such a great organization. They were so encouraging. And I thought, well, I can't just go hide under the bed again now. I'll go forward. And I was emotionally ready to do it at that point. I was leaving my last abusive relationship. I was realizing how that was still all like entwined, and it just felt like a sign. And I mean, I don't even believe in signs, but it just felt like momentum that needed to be, I just needed to get on the bus, because it was starting to roll out of town. And so then I did, and I finished the manuscript, and I pitched it around to various publishers, and my agent did, and then I ended up at Lake Drive Books, and they're fantastic. And so we've been in the crafting the book for the past year, and pre-orders are open actually tomorrow. So
right.
by the time your episode comes out, it'll be open.
It'll be February 9th that pre-orders come out. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. And so you feel like this book has kind of been a cathartic way for you to like continue with your healing journey. I mean, do you find yourself even now still finding pockets that kind of come up that you need to process and heal from? Do you ever feel like you are like, we sometimes get asked this question, especially when you throw around the word deconstruction, because people are like, well, you've got to reconstruct, don't you? And I am a huge believer that I hope I'm always deconstructing. I hope I'm always questioning, because I think for so long I was not allowed to, question anything. And so, like, do you feel like that's something, do you feel the same way, or do you feel differently about kind of your process of deconstruction, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, I feel like it really is, it's a lifelong process, and I'm kind of sad I only started as late as I did, because I mean, I could live another 3 lifetimes and probably still not process it all. And people they ask for advice, like, what is your advice for that? And I always, I say I attack it with a 2-column triage system. And when you leave a really high control religion like Adventism, there's all the stuff you weren't allowed to do, And so that's my 1 column. And I just concentrated on the top things that I most wanted to experience or master or do, that, so obviously sex, but drinking and eating meat and dancing, and those were all at the top of my list. We also weren't allowed to gamble, and we weren't allowed those kinds of things don't mean much to me, so I put those like down at the bottom. Sure. I don't really need to master 70s television shows or from when I grew up, or music, so those are all at the bottom. And then the other column is like, what hurt you the most? What do you need to heal from the most? That was were your biggest problems within the religion, and then to start on those. And for me, again, like a lot of people had theological issues. They can't get some biblical something right, and it's really a struggle for them. I don't have any of that. What I had was purity culture and submission training, and just obedience. And so I put those at the very top of my list, and I'll be working on those forever.
What are some
And
modalities you use
Oh, that's a
while
great
you're
question.
healing?
Yeah.
What, like,
ooh, my goodness. Well, let me tell you,
okay.
last week I did my first psilocybin deep dive therapy
Mm,
thing.
Okay.
I had never ever, of course, in college, because I went to a non-Adventist college and I was big into my first, like, yeah, let's get into the real world. So I did all the drugs because I went to college in New York City, but I never did psychedelics because I was so terrified of the like end times devil
Yeah.
bullshit that was buried in my
yeah,
psyche.
yeah,
Plus, I just knew I was a control freak, and I just thought, okay, I can never let my brain out of my control. Um, and so, but I've been working, so I have two therapists,
mhm,
and one of them is a psilocybin microdosing. So I've been doing that, and then I did my deep dive. That was incredible, and I'm gonna keep doing that. And somatic work, a lot of
yeah,
somatic work
Mhm.
of trying to find in your body where what's
yeah,
talking and what's stuck,
absolutely.
and
Yeah, I'm a big
talking
fan
to
of
my
that.
little child in there and my
Mhm.
Mhm.
angry teenager and just
Yep.
all
Yeah,
all of those parts of me that never got to speak are
That's
now
right.
screaming.
Yep. Yep.
And then just on a practical level, I'm a runner, and I process by running a lot, and getting just the angst out of my body in terms of uh just all that stuff that builds up.
Yeah. Do you find that I know Carl talks about writing as kind of an outlet, a way to process. Do you
Yes.
find that has been helpful as well?
I do. I do. I journal. One of my therapists has me doing a gratitude journal every day. And then I have a second memoir volume planned. So I've been kind of working on that here and there. And so writing for sure. Writing is core.
Yeah.
I'm never sure how to ask this question, but if I were talking about it, I would say, a lot of people think that we always got warned about the slippery slope or committing one sin and it opened up everything, don't be in the world, don't, just like you were trained.
Mhm.
Mm.
Um, but you've tried a lot of things and you've done a lot of things since your deconstruction, but is your life, I
Mhm.
mean, did you experience that? Was, well, I got out of religion and everything went to shit, or did your life get better? I mean, is all this the therapy and the somatic therapy? We love that.
Mhm.
Um, did it work for you? Are you better? And so let's use religious word. What's your testimony now that
But
you
what's my
slid down you
testimony?
slid down the slippery slope and it was fun? Or what's your testimony about that?
Well, when I got out, it felt like I was on this straight trajectory up. I moved to New York City, and I wanted to be an actor, and I was in a movie, and I did all these things. I got my Ivy League degree because that's what I had really wanted all my life. And I did all the external things that were fabulous. And I have lifelong friends from that period. And I think there was a point my senior year of college where my mother pulled me out of school and tried to control me one last time.
Mhm.
And I think all of that forward growth that I had just sprung into as soon as I left the church kind of derailed at that point, sadly. I think I would have continued to go on and probably deconstructed in a world positive, fabulous way. Unfortunately, when she did that, I fell right back into the old patterning. So I was still living in the world. I did actually get to go back and finish my degree, etc. But by that point, I was under the control of a much older man. And that was it for the rest of my life. I went from controlling man to controlling man. And so did it make my life better? Yes. I did not, I mean, absolutely. I can't imagine, I probably would not be alive if I had had to become a Seventh-day Adventist bride and just go into the blinders on um, world. Uh, but that being said, it was a really hard realization to just realize that leaving didn't magically cure everything.
Right.
That I still, and I had these deeply programmed things that just were weighing me down. And so, and certainly now the past 5 or so years with therapy and I'm just solo and on my own, and it's been fabulous. And so I can at this point say, oh my gosh, yes, it's so much better.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's, part of life too. You have your, you have your
Yeah.
hills and you have your valleys. I mean, it's going to
Yeah.
happen. And I don't think, I think if we're being honest, that also happens inside of religion too.
Yes.
But we just want to bypass it by saying, well, I'm just going to trust in God more, I'm going to pray more, or whatever.
Right.
One question I like to ask, because when we first left organized religion, I would talk to people and as it came up or whatever, and share part of my story, and a lot of people would say, oh well, wow, I'm really sorry that happened to you, but that doesn't happen at my church. I want to know what your advice is to, or how you respond when people say, well, that doesn't, I'm sorry that happened to you. That's terrible, about your dad, or, if you had to deal with sexual abuse or whatever, but that doesn't happen at my church.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on if I'm feeling snarky or not. Sometimes I bite back and say, well, you just proved that you're not a safe person. People don't tell you.
Yeah.
Which is very true, because it does happen in every church. So if you
Absolutely.
don't think it is, you're,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
but I think when I'm feeling more instructional and not snarky, I tend to try to say to people like, your experience, my experience does not define this church.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Nobody's personal experience does. You need to look at the history,
Mm-hmm.
at the leadership, at the policies, at the founders, the crimes committed by their members, the lawsuits they're involved in. That's what defines the
Yeah.
church.
Yeah.
And that is very clear that there is a lot of abuse.
And it may not be the church across the street from us, but look at the denomination as a whole.
Right. Exactly. The leadership. Yeah. The structure and everything.
Right.
Yep.
If it happens to one of us, if we're family, it happens to all of us.
And that was my biggest
Yeah.
thing, it's just like, it's just not okay, whether it's happened to you or not,
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, people have a hard time respecting individual journeys, but then they also have a hard time taking corporate responsibility for things,
Good point.
because they've always advocated it to the toddler in charge, the junior high boy that's running
Yeah.
the show. Um,
Yeah.
you want to ask your
Yeah.
question now?
So how can people get a hold of you?
Oh, okay. I am on social media. I'm on Instagram and TikTok as The Glory Hole. And that's, you have to remember to put the W in there, WHOLE, because otherwise you'll come on some stuff you don't want to
Yeah,
discuss.
I don't want to Google that.
Exactly.
Yes.
I picked that name because I love plays on words. And to me, that's like my analogy for Christianity. You like extend this very, very vulnerable part of yourself off into a void that you can't see and don't know. And you can either have this divine experience, or you can be really disfigured and maimed for life. And so that's my analogy for Christianity bed. So I'm on TikTok and Instagram as The Glory Hole. I'm on Substack as just my author name, Melissa Duge Spiers. I have a Glory Hole Memoir Gmail account. It's just The Glory Hole Memoir Gmail. And you can always reach me through my publisher at Lake Drive Books.
Okay.
And the book is at this point available everywhere.
Yeah.
Amazon, Barnes and Noble. You can order it through bookstores. You can order it on my publisher's page. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think
Mhm.
this podcast will air about a week and a half after we've taught this date.
Awesome.
So somewhere
Okay.
around the 23rd or something
Mhm.
like that. But the book is called Holy Disobedience.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Melissa Duge Spiers, and Duge is Duge.
Hmm.
So make sure you find her
Yeah.
and check her out. And we're going to give her some more names of people to talk to after we turn the mic off. So we just want to thank you for coming out and
Yeah.
just
Thank
spending your
you.
Thank
time doing
you.
this.
This has been wonderful. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
yeah. Thank you for joining us. We really do appreciate it.
For all the people out there, we thank you for tuning in and supporting us, giving us encouragement, and
Mhm.
every once in a while saying something. We wish our people would talk more, but they don't, and that's okay. I don't either. So, but as always, we encourage you to be where you are, be who you are, and be at peace.
Thank you for joining us today on the Desert Sanctuary podcast.
Remember, all who wander in the desert are not lost.
We believe all of our stories are sacred.
We are always here if you need someone to hear your story.
Check out our blog on Pathos and also our YouTube channel.
And stay tuned for our Leaning Forward conference.
Remember, we love you.
And be at peace.